Hello everybody, you have tuned in to Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover virtually any aspect of making a murderer. I go over the evidence, the documents, the photos. So if you like, stay tuned, and in the future I'll have many more videos besides the one you're about to see. Hello folks, we are here today to talk a little bit about those erased voicemails from Teresa's voicemail. This is going to be a good one because, you know, we all remember Kratz in court. You know, if they meant to suggest that Teresa, no, nobody was suggesting that. Anyways, we'll get to that. So, we're gonna go through some documents here today. We're gonna go through some things for you to see here. We're gonna first off, we are gonna be proving beyond any shadow of a doubt that Teresa's voicemails were full on the 1st, on 11/1, on November 1st of 2005. They were full. Where I'm going to show you, there's absolute proof of that. And then we're going to show you where on, what we're also going to be showing you is that the law enforcement that were calling Teresa's phone number on 11/3 and 11/4. So there was no rings, and instantly they were hearing, actually not voicemail, they were hearing a message telling them that the voice message box was full, or the voicemail box was full. So that's what they were getting on 11/3 and 11/4, the law enforcement that were calling her phone. And I'm going to show you beyond a shadow of a doubt that on 11/1 that people were getting that same message. And then I'm going to show you what happened on 11/2, on the 2nd, November 2nd. So here we go. We'll go into the first documents now, where I'm going to show you that Ryan Hillegas called her phone on the 1st, and that he got the voice messages full message. So that's what we're going to see first, and then we'll come back. So this is Ryan Hillegas on the stand, and we all know how dodgy he is in court, of course. But here we are. He's asked about, you never talked with her on the phone after that on Monday, or he says no. On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or you never called her? He says no. Well, that's not correct. I did call her somewhere in the middle of the week, and I did not get an answer, and her voicemail box said that it was full. Okay, do you remember what day that was? No, I don't. Thursday, Wednesday? I called her on Thursday when I realized she was missing, but I believe I called her once earlier in the week. So, want to just point out, this is Ryan Hillegas. He basically says, oh yeah, he called her on Thursday, but then he kind of just says in there, oh yeah, I believe I called her once earlier in the week. Not saying much about it, not being specific about it, of course, which is my whole problem with Ryan anytime he testifies. But fair enough. He says he called earlier in the week, and we're going to show when he did. We're going to remember for him when he can't. Okay, so this is from when Ryan Hillegas was speaking to the press at one point, about a year before trial. At this point in time, he clearly remembers the fact that he called her on Tuesday. And Hillegas called to ask Halbach about the party that she had discussed going to. She had discussed with him going to, when she saw him earlier in the weekend. The voicemail box was full, which was weird for someone who with a business. He says she's not the kind of person who would just take off and not call. So there you have it right there. Ryan Hillegas claims that he called on Tuesday and got a message telling him that the voice message box was full. Okay, so there you see Ryan saying that yes, he indeed, when he's talking to the press a year before trial, that he indeed called her on Tuesday, November 1st, and that he got basically a message that her voice message box was full. Okay, what I'm going to do right now, first off, I'm going to play the two different voice message box full messages that were used by her carrier at the time. And and they're like everybody's. They're all the same pretty much. You know, they may have a different person saying it. They may have one or two words different, but they're all pretty much the same kind of length, and you know, they're not all that. They're just not all that varying. So anyways, but these two were particularly used by Singular at the time. And so you're going to see that they're both 4 seconds. Then we're going to go into the phone records, and we're going to show you the phone records where it shows that Ryan made a call, and it was 4 seconds. And then we'll come on back, and we'll move to the next point. Because at that point, we will have proven, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Teresa Hallbach's voice message box was full on 11/1, November 1st. So let's move on to the voice message box full messages, and we'll come back. Okay, this is taken from Ryan Hillegas's phone records. It shows right there where it says 4731. That's Teresa's. He was calling, but it only says 1 minute, or I'm assuming that's 1 minute, which is probably a default. Okay, so let's check Teresa's phone bill here. So this is the call. It's 4 seconds long, and it's at the same time we saw on Ryan's bill or whatever. So here we have the basic time of the call, the length of the call, which is 4 seconds. So, okay, now we'll move on to the next bit.
The mailbox is full and cannot accept any messages at this time. Goodbye. The mailbox is full and cannot accept any messages at this time. Goodbye.
Okay, so now we have it pretty much beyond a shadow of a doubt there that Ryan did call Teresa's phone on November 1st, and he did get that message. He got that 4 second message, because although it showed like a 1 minute call on his record, it showed the exact seconds on Teresa's bill. So we knew it was 4 seconds. I showed you that message is exactly 4 seconds. So now we're going to move into the officers, the deputies in this case, when they start to investigate, when they call her number on on basically November 3rd and on November 4th, and what happens when they call. So we're going to go ahead and see what happens now. Skipping over November 2nd, we're going to November 3rd and 4th now, and what law enforcement encountered when they called Teresa's phone number. Okay, this is Leslie Lemieux calling Teresa's number on the 3rd, and she basically calls. The phone went instantly to voicemail with a message indicating that her voice message was full. Teresa's family said that Teresa had only one cell phone, and she used it for personal and business use. So there we have that it goes straight to voicemail. In other words, no ringing. Okay, so now we move into Kelly Sipple calling the number on November 4th. Basically the second phone call she made was to Teresa's number. This would be Teresa's cell phone, and the phone still went directly to her voicemail, indicating the voice box was full. So also again indicating directly to the voicemail box. In other words, no ringing. Okay, so what I want to point out right now here is you notice that when the voicemail box is full and the phone is basically off the network, when you call the phone, it goes straight to voicemail. You don't hear ringing. Okay? You don't hear ringing because the network is no longer sensing the phone. It knows that the phone is no longer on the network, which means, number one, it's not powered, or it's destroyed, whichever one. So, but the thing is, we know that the voice message box was full on the 1st, right? Okay. And we also know that in order for the phone to ring, the Singular network has to sense it out there. In other words, it has to have power. And if it's out there and it's powered on, and Singular can sense its ID on the network, then it can tell that phone you have voicemails or whatever. Okay. This is the tricky bit, because now I'm going to show you what happened on November 2nd. Okay? I'm going to show you a CASO report of one person who called Teresa Hallbach on the 2nd and left a voicemail. Not only did they leave a voicemail, the phone rang twice. So we're going to see that coming up. Also, another interesting tidbit is that Teresa's mother, Karen, was also able to leave a voice message. There's no report as to whether or not she heard rings, but it is known that she was able to leave a voice message on November 2nd. So we're going to go ahead and show you that right now real quick, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about Kratz in court, going, if they're suggesting she was alive on Tuesday, that bit. Right. So anyways, let's get to it. Okay, this is a gentleman that called Teresa's phone on Tuesday, November 2nd. He stated that on Wednesday morning, 11:05, he called Teresa's cell phone and left a voicemail. He stated that her phone rang a couple of times before going to voicemail, and that caused him to assume the cell phone was still active at the time. Investigation continues. Also keep in mind that her own family said she only had one phone. They specifically said she did not have multiple phones. So, the fact that the phone rang is a problem for the prosecution. And I would love to be able to go into the phone bills for Teresa and see what was going on November 2nd. But, Kratz only gives us this up until November 1st. So I do know that Dean and Jerry were standing by with the records from the 2nd, but Judge Willis wouldn't allow it to be entered into trial. So we are just left saying, "What you talking about, Willis?" But anyway, Willis basically wouldn't allow it in. Kratz didn't want it in because, as I said before, he saw the way he was getting all, trying to claim that somebody was trying to suggest that Teresa was alive on November 2nd when that was not what anybody was suggesting. And anyway, more of Kratz's ridiculous theatrics. Okay, so there it is. We see it clearly. There's clearly more than enough evidence to prove that the voicemail box was full on the 1st of November. Ryan Hillegas calls it. A year before trial, he remembers that he called it and the voice message box was full. When it gets time to trial, he doesn't remember so well. But fortunately, we have that, piece of press where he spoke to the press and told them that when he called on Tuesday, anyways, we are able to prove that through the phone records as well. So this voicemail box was full on the 1st. Okay, then we go into the 2nd. Okay, sometime early in the morning on the 2nd, or during the wee hours of the night maybe, or something, that's when somebody somehow goes in to Teresa's phone and deletes some voicemails. Okay, it has to be through the phone because that's the thing that made the phone power back up and send an ID to Singular, so that Singular would say, "Oh, okay, the phone's back on the network," and therefore, instead of sending people at the switch, at the Singular, switch where their communication center is, instead of just funneling people to voicemail, as it was, it sensed that ID of when somebody opened it up to delete voicemails. Okay, and then at 7:30 in the morning, Teresa's mother Karen is able to leave a voicemail. That's pretty early in the morning. So, and we know that Ryan Hillegas, his call was at 6:42 on the 1st. So that's, almost 7 o'clock on the 1st that he was getting the voice messages full. So definitely sometime between basically almost 7 o'clock on the 1st and, roughly 7 o'clock on the 2nd in a.m. So basically a 12-hour window there. Somebody got the phone, powered it on, deleted voicemails, and then powered it back off. And that's why it continued to ring for a couple hours when Teresa's mother called it, and then when the other person that you saw the statement from called and was able to leave a voicemail and clearly stated that the phone rang a couple times or a few times. So then after that, the phone is off. It eventually drops back off of Singular's network, and Singular recognizes that it has dropped off of the network, and so therefore it doesn't ring anymore when people call it. And that explains why law enforcement on the 3rd and 4th, when they were calling it, were going straight to voicemail. They were not to voicemail, but they were going straight to that message about the voicemail box being full. It wasn't even bothering to ring. It was just going straight to the box is full. So that's what I'm trying to get at. Clearly something changed on the second. Something changed. The phone got powered on or whatever, because clearly it must have been sensed by Singular's network for it to have started ringing the phone again, and for there to have been room for 2 people to leave a voicemail. So this is the fishy thing. This is why I just love making fun of Kratz so much, that bit in court, because, man, he looks like somebody just hit him with a brick, because he is just like, if we had any idea that they were going to try to suggest that Teresa was alive on the second or whatever, and it's just like, good grief, dude, you are not that thick. That's just more theatrics by him, because nobody was suggesting that. And it's just, and then Willis backing him up, of course, Willis just saying, oh, yeah, no, that's not admissible. We don't need the jury to hear that. We don't need to hear him. We don't need him hearing about how there's there's possibly another suspect that nobody deemed it was worthy to go investigate. Yeah, that's not relevant. Yeah, I think it is relevant. Anyways, so that's about it, folks. Very, very interesting stuff here. Clearly something was going on with Teresa's phone on the second, and I, for one, would love to know what it was. So we'll see you. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe.